So, hello everyone, officially, and welcome to this webinar titled Playful Teaching with LEGO Education Resources, organized by STEM Alliance and Scientix with special support from LEGO Education. My name is Anastasia Boyko. I'm project manager of STEM Alliance, an initiative that brings together education and industry, and I will be moderating this session. Along with me, we have my colleague Bjorn under the tech support account. He will be helping you with any technical issues. So if you experience any technical issues, just chat with him and he will help you to solve this. We also have in the room our speaker who will be presenting at this occasion. I will pass on the word to him in a minute. Meanwhile, just a brief introduction to our webinar and to why we are doing this. So we organized this webinar to give teachers, career counselors, education authorities, and researchers an understanding of careers in the STEM field, all the variety, all the types, and how you can trigger interest from your pupils to attract them to go into STEM subjects, to be more interested in STEM subjects and in STEM careers in future when they have a choice to do that. So with us today, as I said already, we have our speakers, Jelle de Jong. He's consultant and trainer and education inspirator at Play, Learn, Change, who will present his experience related to his career path. And he will talk about the LEGO education approach, its background, possible impact on education, as well as about the link with skills needed in future STEM careers. So we will first invite our speaker to deliver his presentation, and at the end of the session we will have 15 minutes for you, our audience, to address questions to our expert through the chat. So you can see the small window where you can chat with other participants, but also we would like to invite you to post your questions there. It's in the right down corner. So we will collect the questions from you and address them to Jelle in the end of the webinar. That's it from my side. Thanks for listening to this short introduction, and I'm leaving the floor to our speaker for today. Jelle, please take the floor and enjoy.
Yes, thank you very much, Anastasia. Thank you very much, Bjorn, for the support. And let me go to my first slide, the short introduction of me. As said, I'm not working with or at LEGO Education, I'm working with LEGO Education. And LEGO Education has invited me to do this webinar to tell you a little bit more about how they relate to career paths, to STEM, to STEAM, and skills development in creating their solutions in the classroom. I have a background in science. Officially, I studied applied physics. And for the past 15 years, I have been working in the field of science, education, and communication. First, directly organizing activities at schools. And in the past 5 years, together with some colleagues, we try to support schools by training team members, supporting principals, school boards in implementing science and technology in their everyday education. And even a step further, not only science and technology, but also the methodology that is used to teach science and technology, which is a very hands-on method, to implement that also in other areas and to create a situation where science and technology are interwoven with other subjects like language, geometry, history, arts. But that's for later in the presentation. Amongst other things, the relationship that we have with LEGO Education is that I am both a LEGO Education Academy teacher trainer and I do some support work for them in translating materials to the education goals, in this case in my country, in the Netherlands. And on the other hand, I'm a LEGO Serious Play and Design Play facilitator, which means that I use the same kinds of techniques that LEGO Education uses in the classroom to teach children, to support professionals on all levels to have a different way of communication and to help them to develop new strategies, to share values, and to get more insight in complex situations. And the latter is exactly what Lego Education wants to do with their solutions, but then for students. I will come back to that later at the end of my presentation. So to start with, I thought, well, let's take some inspiration, and in this case from Benjamin Franklin, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. And I think this is the core of what Lego Education tries to do with all their solutions. At the same time, this is the core of what happens in most science and technology classrooms throughout Europe. It means it's hands-on. It means children, students are involved, teachers are involved. It means that what they do has meaning for them, and there is some perseverance, like Benjamin Franklin, to keep on trying until you succeed. So that was why I wanted to start with this quote, because it sums up quite nicely the rest of the presentation. First, a short agenda. First, we look at the role of STEM in today's society, connected to some careers. A short note on STEM or STEAM. Sometimes it's used both, just to get everybody on the same level. A short recap. Then I look at the skills that are required to develop with children to support STEM and STEAM inside and outside your classroom. Then we have a look at creativity. What is creativity and what can be the impact of it, and what is creativity related to play? Because then we come to the playful learning part of the presentation, and hopefully we see the results of that in lifelong learning by self-guided, confident and creative learners. Of course, that's how students can learn, but this is also about the role of the teacher. So that's where we take a little step to playful teaching. And what does it ask from you as a teacher to do so? And then we have a more in-depth look in what Lego Education does. And finally, we have a short look on, in this case, Lego Serious Play, to show how the same techniques and methodology is applied in a professional context. To start off, a short recap. Most of you probably already know. We have STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And one of the discussions that we have, or that I encounter, is a debate between skills and knowledge. And to me, they're both equally important. You need knowledge to apply skills, but you can also use those skills to acquire new knowledge. And of course, who needs these skills and who needs STEM in education? Well, for example, a nurse in a hospital, using more and more technology to support patients, but also to support her in her work, with all kinds of data, with all kinds of automatic machines. Just I see some remarks about the sound. I don't know if that is me, because the sound was nice when I worked with that. I could try to.
It's actually okay from our side, so maybe you can speak.
Yes?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. So one of the career paths that is more and more becoming a technological career is care in hospitals, doctors, nurses. The other one is, of course, the technology that we use in our daily homes. One of them could be your heating system or your water pipes. But also there you see more and more technology involved. It's not just a pipe pumping the water, it's pumps, it's automatic controls, which also require some programming. And then, of course, we have the traditional technology in building a ship like this and do some welding, But even there, you see that also these kinds of ships get more and more complicated and more based on IT. So also the role of students working on a ship like this changes because they have to learn that they are part of a bigger system. And then, of course, one of the summits of technology is going into space. I'll come back to this later because it also relates to creativity. It also relates to confidence, of course. And there's a lot of technology involved. We cannot survive in space without it. But there are a lot of other skills that you need to survive in an environment like this. We'll come back to that later. And then, of course, we need creativity. And this is a shot from the Apollo 13 movie where engineers have to find a quick solution to get something square into a round hole. And they can only use what is already up there in the Apollo 13 capsule. So this is the kind of challenge that also in STEM education you see a lot presented to students. This is the problem, this is the context, and you are the ones responsible for creating a solution and designing a new solution. What we see is that in our culture, because of all this technology and this new science and this new knowledge, we are in a time that our culture is shifting from the traditional aspects of having property, the materials that we can use, doing, being ourselves, the traditional roles, the traditions, our identities, and knowing our knowledge, our experience, and the meaning of things. We are slowly shifting into, or very rapidly shifting into, a society where these four are the basic ingredients to new instruments. Instruments of making, sharing, thinking, and playing. And these instruments, they interact with these traditional norms and values, but they also shape new ones. And one of them, of course, is today we are presenting online, and I see a lot of you from all over Europe, which is great to see, by the way, which was not possible 10, 20 years ago. But for students today, for children today, this is very normal. Sometimes we even learn the news from across the globe quicker than we learn the news from our neighbors through all this new technology and through the connections that we have and the networks that we have globally. So in this change, new technologies play a major role. And then a short note on STEAM or STEM. I don't know how it is with you in your countries, but in the Netherlands, the last few years, the focus has been on STEM. And the last year, there has been a new focus where STEAM is introduced. So the A is added from arts. And of course, there's a lot of questions. Why do we go from STEM to STEAM? And to me, it's not per se a change in what we do. It's not per se a change in how we look at things. It's mostly a change in how we describe things. We are still doing science, technology, engineering, and math. We are still using the hands-on methods. We are still having students that are being challenged to come up with new knowledge, a new design, new insights. And the only thing is that one aspect that was not per se mentioned before, but was for me the reason to go into my current job, is that arts also puts a bigger focus on the skills and also the soft skills that are needed to excel in STEM education or in our society, and those we'll come back to later, but they all relate to these 4 new instruments of making, sharing, playing, and thinking. So looking at the skills that we need, most of them, they relate to science and technology, not on a context basis, but more in, or directly to the subject, but in the context. So it is to create a better understanding of technology and its role in society, which we call scientific citizenship. But there's more to that than just the knowledge about science and technology. It's also about being able to communicate about it. And in the current world, being able to communicate about it in different cultural contexts globally. And the skills that we need also are related to the fact that ICT has a bigger impact on our daily life. On our personal level, it's the way we connect with friends, but also in our work, it's the way we work, but also we don't not only work inside our own organization, but there are a lot of connections outside our organization, which is also a little bit new to related 10 or 20 years ago. And then the last part is that it influences our education, and it is changing our classrooms, and the skills are both skills that we need to teach, but also those skills are stepping into our classroom, whether we like it or not, whether we want to do it or not, because our students bring them into our classroom. They are connected, they are related, they have a mobile phone, and they want to use all these technologies and all these new relationships in their learning environment as well. So now focusing more on what LEGO Education does. LEGO Education is part of the LEGO Group, and part of the family of LEGO is the LEGO Foundation. And the LEGO Foundation supports all kinds of projects internationally, but they also support collecting research and insights on learning and development and education, and how to do that in the best possible way. And they came up with a model of the skills that are needed to excel in science and technology using STEAM. And there are a lot of different models worldwide. They are all more or less based on the same principles, the same scientific background, the same insights in how people develop and what they need. The LEGO Foundation condensed that into 5 critical areas, critical skills that we need to train, that we need to learn, that we need to develop, or that we already have naturally, but sometimes tend to forget in education. The first one is physical skills, which are about you and the world and your interaction between that, learning about gravity and balance, movement. This is a critical one. Also, to understand the virtual world, it's important that you are able to create an image of the real world. I come back to creativity right after this sheet. So I take a next step into social skills. The social skills are about collaborating, communicating with each other, understanding perspectives. So it's not only about me being able to communicate, but also me being able to empathize with you and to understand your background and the context that you are working in, but also trying to understand what is important to you. So social skills are very complex, and sometimes they take a lifetime to develop. Closely related are the emotional skills. And first, they are about the self. They are about confidence, self-control, perseverance. dealing with disappointments and dealing with frustration and still being able to continue. They are also about the part where empathy is needed. So also to relate to the emotions of other people. Then the cognitive skills, they are about problem solving. They are about dealing with knowledge. They are about following rules, learning new rules. So they also have a big impact on all the other ones, and that's why they are in a circle. In the end, all these 5 skills, they interact with each other, and you need sometimes the emotional capability to deal with rules and to deal with a disappointment, but also to deal with the fact that other people might have another opinion, to develop the cognitive skills to be able to develop a strategy to deal with that, for example, in a project team. I said I would come back to creativity because that's a complex one. And when I do a training in the Netherlands with teachers, I sometimes ask them, who thinks of him or herself that you are creative? And then what I always notice is that only a few people raise their hands. And they look at their colleague that is really creative, making stuff. And then I give the example that I ask the participants who was able to come here and has never been here at the location that I do a training. And some more hands raised. And then I try to explain that that is creativity. Creativity is about getting new knowledge, new insights, and applying them in also new situations. So again, the Lego Foundation has written a very nice brochure, what we mean by creativity, which sums up a lot of research about creativity, and they came up with a process of 3 steps: connecting, exploring, and transforming. And connecting is about understanding the context of a question or a problem, or the context that you are in, and getting the motivation, getting inspired, getting curious to investigate that world and that context. And also probably going to find some new questions and challenges. And then you get into the exploring phase, where you start to try new things, where you start to experiment, sometimes with a physical thing, but it could also be a thought process. You try to get new knowledge. Key element here is that you do it together. So you do it with more than just yourself, because you get the inspiration also from others. Because, like I said, they are coming from a different context, perhaps. So they have a different view on a certain problem or a certain challenge or a certain capability. And so you try out different things, and sometimes you hit upon the right solution, the right answer for you. So you think, this is my eureka moment. And that's when you go into the transforming phase. That's when you start to communicate, reflect on your work, you share it with others. So you also have to verbally give words to what you have done and what you have figured out, which is a very important phase to in the relationship to learning, because this is where the real in-depth learning takes place. So in the end, creativity is described as the iterative process, taking different steps, every time doing things a little bit different, based on a new hypothesis, learning from the steps before, and trying it again, of connecting, exploring, and transforming. It seems like a circle where you have to do connecting, exploring, transforming in that order, but sometimes they're a little bit mixed up, sometimes not entirely clear. Um, but you keep doing all these 3 steps again and again and again. And in the end, you are able to come up with a new idea, a new solution, a new design, perhaps even a new question, to transform the world in both new and meaningful ways. And new and meaningful could be that it's something new and meaningful for the whole world. And in your classroom, children will probably learn a lot of new and meaningful things that are not so new to you. Sometimes they are. Hopefully they are sometimes. But in this case, we define new and meaningful to the individual. So the child that is learning and that has figured out a whole new perspective on the world because it found out about how gravity works, for example. So in the end, by this definition, everyone that does something new is by definition creative. Finding something new, a new solution, a new design, a new idea to a question, to a problem, to a challenge is by definition a creative process. So then we come to the play part. And why is play important? Well, play is important because it's part of our natural being. It's the way children interact with the world, interact with each other. And they do it from when they are still a toddler. By play, they figure out the world. They figure out how stuff works. And step by step, they're learning new things. Mostly by themselves. I'll come back to that later. And play is a state where you are so fully immersed that even when the process can be a little bit frustrating, the expected outcome, the expected results is so rewarding that you keep on going, you keep on trying. That is one of the characteristics of play. And the other characteristic is that you are so in flow that you forget about time. And even as adults, we know about that, because also adults play. So it's not only related to children, it's a general ingredient of what we do and how we learn and how we try new stuff. So play is important. And play can be completely free, or can be structured, or even have learning goals. Play is influenced by the environment, by our peers, by the adults, and other people around us. So that is where the interaction comes from. Play is also influenced by our culture and by our values and beliefs. In the end, play is also open-ended, and it also should be with not too many rules. There can be some basics, and sometimes children make up new rules. But in the end, it's also an experience where you feel the freedom to try new things and to do the stuff that you have never done before. And if a playful experience is created, you will notice that you have full attention, there is self-control. This is also related to the open-ended part. There's motivation, there's confidence, and most of the times you are problem solving. I will just do this one briefly, looking at the time as well, because I see a question about Lego Education Spy Prime. I will come to that point near the end of the presentation. So the Lego Foundation also has looked at defining play and the relationship with creativity. And there are 5 characteristics of a playful activity. First of all, it's meaningful. Like we said, it's the context. It's that I can relate to the activity. It's joyful. Although it might be frustrating in the process, it is joyful to do, and we know that there is a reward at the end. It's always socially interactive. You do it with others. And even if a child is playing on its own, the play will get better when there is some interaction, for example, with parents asking a question or giving a new idea. It's actively engaging. When you're playing, like I said, you forget time, you just go on and on and on, which is also important in solving problems, because sometimes it is frustrating and sometimes you don't find the answer straight away, and sometimes you don't even find the answer after 10 tries. It's important that you feel motivated to try it the 11th time. So that is also the iterative part. Trying and trying again, changing little things every time you try, based on a new hypothesis, and looking at the results again, learning from that and trying it again. All until you find the right answer. So if you do this, you get creative, reflective, and confident learners that feel the confidence also to play, but also to try and learn new things, and that are supportive to others. I will skip this one for now, because I come to the teaching part, and this is also where Lego education comes in. Because in the end, a lot of children show all the characteristics of play. And in the end, children are naturally researchers and are looking for those open-ended questions and challenges. And they take a go at it. But it is also important to realize that to have that playful learning in the classroom, you have to feel some creativity, some play as a teacher yourself. Sometimes, and so that's where your role as a teacher becomes important. How can you create the environment, create the context where the children can play and still learn new things and still work on the learning goals that you set out as a teacher? First of all, be open to novelties, be open to the ideas that children bring in. If they want to try something, let them try. But again, like we said on the creative process, let them also reflect on what they have done and what they have learned from it. Even if they don't succeed, even if they are going to try something that you think is impossible, they will learn from it once you get into the discussion and the reflection with them. Dare to try yourself, also in the classroom. That's where my relation with schools comes in. I don't only train them, but sometimes I even support them in a change process. You have to feel the freedom and the confidence as a teacher to try out new things yourself, because that's exactly what you want your students to do. You want to try out new things, reflect on it, and share it with your colleagues. As said, set the learning goals, but leave room for students to experiment and reflect on their own take on a subject. So leave a little bit of room. I see a question where someone asks, connect Lego education with biology. And this is where you can connect. Sometimes you can, for example, have a biology experiment. You want to teach them something about frogs and the different stages in the life of a frog and how their body is changing. Using, for example, Lego education materials like we do too, which is robotics for grades, let me translate that, grade 3 to 5 roughly. Children could create a model of a frog and a model of a froglet first, and they can build the different ways that a frog moves. But they can also experiment with that. And the room that you can create is that they start asking their own questions on how this movement of a frog really works, and if a frog, for example, will be able to climb up some stairs. I don't know, might be a question that they have. Let them try out. Others might just try something else. So that is how you can involve subjects and at the same time leave open space for children to choose their own specific topic. And once you get to the sharing part in the end, let them share amongst each other. And so they can also learn from what other groups of students have learned from the activity or the experiment that you did in the classroom. And most of all, have fun. I mean, joyful is also that you enjoy it with the children. And of course, coming from a Lego education background, like I just described, the Lego education materials can support you in that. Just a short note on Lego education. Next year, Lego education will be there for 40 years. And also another short note is that in the past 40 years, they have created a full continuum of solutions all the way from kindergarten to upper secondary. So it starts with something like, for example, Coding Express, where students learn something about not programming itself, but the skills they need to program, putting things in an order, thinking in loops, in things that repeat themselves, thinking about choices in programming language that is called an if-then-else statement, for example. And they do it with a train. And in the end, in upper secondary, they might use Mindstorms, and even universities might use Mindstorms, where they create their own programming, where they even create their own firmware for it. And all the steps in between are just there to take students to the next level, and perhaps also take you as a teacher to the next level, step by step. I will come back to this after this slide, because now I come to the question about Spike Prime. This is the latest robotics kit. And one thing that you notice is, for example, the colors, because this kit is created to be completely gender inclusive. But also the colors will help you to pick the right brick from the box much quicker than when they all have the same color. You see the brick with a button in the middle. You see it in all models. This is the new core, and all the activities that come with Spike Prime, they are based on everything that I've just told you. They are based on the fact that activities should be playful, but still have learning goals. They are open-ended questions to students. So some activities, or at least activities in the beginning, they have some pre-described model to start with, but they always end up asking students to change the model, to change the program, and to do their own thing with the material, and to ask their own questions and trying to find the answers to the questions they ask. So the set is not available yet. It will be available from the 9th of January. So if you have more questions about that, feel free to ask them, or to relate back to me also after the presentation is given. Now I come back to this slide. All the lessons that Lego Education creates follow this creative process. A little bit different. Since last year, 2 years ago, Lego Education started to use the BSCS model from the US. It's called 5E. Why is it called 5E? Because there are 5 words, 5 steps to it, and they start with an E. The first one is engage. It's the connecting phase, figuring out the context. It's explore. That's where you start to try out new things, construct your different solutions, your ideas, try them out together with others. Explain, this is where you explain them, share them with others, where you also reflect on them with others. And elaborate is where you start to apply them in new contexts. So the things you have learned, how to apply them for different problems, or perhaps even a new problem that you come up with. And in the middle is evaluate, because it's part of all the steps, like in the explore phase, just like we described with the creative process. It's an iterative process, so every time you reflect on what you have done, what you have learned, what the outcome was, and you come up with a new question or a new hypothesis, and you're going to try new stuff. And for example, with a robotics kit, you start to tinker with the model, to give it a different structure, or you start to work on the program and try out new things there. So we have come a little notices here on the right bottom of this slide. You see the new Lego brick, which has the axle holes inside, so you can combine the pure Technic frames with the stud Lego. So you can also add a lot of other bricks that perhaps have no technology influence, but they are really nice for children to make it their robot or their box or their plotter, because they can be more creative with their builds. So this is also where the A of arts steps in. I just see the last question. Just to answer that straight away, all the lessons are related to the core goals. So they are about the science and technology goals, of course. They are about math, but they also relate to language and art goals. So each of the lesson has a different focus, and there are lessons focusing more on math, and there are lessons focusing more on the social component. So each lesson has different goals, but math is definitely part of it. Then one of the last slides, and that is the relationship to everything that we have, that I've told you, from a Lego education perspective, relates to the student, but also relates to the teacher and to professionals. And so that is where Lego Serious Play, some of you might have heard it, comes in, and that is a methodology developed by Lego and the business schools from Lausanne and Harvard around 20 years ago. And they first used it internally, and then they started to also making it available for outside use. And this is where you apply all those techniques of creativity, of playful learning, as a professional in your work life, not to build, for example, only the working model of a robot, which is, but also to build metaphorical. So to support a discussion within a team, for example, and to share values and insights and ideas. Sometimes also to use different bricks and different models on a table to represent a complex situation and the different aspects or agents in that situation. And also to create a focus on the shared values and ideas instead of where they might differ a little bit. So this is where, so Lego Serious Play, in short, is being creative, reflective, and confident as a professional and a good peer to colleagues, which is exactly what we try to teach students in the classroom. And a short example of someone that used an elephant in a model, which I don't know the exact meaning of, but within the group, and by having the builder explaining it, probably everybody will remember what the elephant meant even a year after the meeting. So this is exactly how also, for example, Spike Prime works when a student tries to tell you about an idea or an insight that he or she has on the problem that she solves. So in the end, we have one saying, and that is that your hands sometimes know a lot more than you think you do, and you can use your hands to show them. In this case, by building with Lego bricks and Lego parts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jelle, for this interesting presentation. It was really nice to hear that by doing you can learn at any age, and also this systematic approach with 5E and all the pedagogies that are behind the resources you explained. It's very well presented, and thank you very much for your time. Now we have some time for the questions to address that we received a couple of them in the chat, but first maybe I can I collected some comments that teachers left while you were speaking. So regarding STEAM, we see STEM, teachers say that art is of vital importance to develop creativity and imagination, so they accept it already, and some of them are already working with Lego Mindstorms and Lego Vidu, if I'm not mistaken. So they mentioned these two specific Lego education tools in the chat. Then yeah, they loved the presentation, and I think the explanation was very clear and very appealing to teachers. So the first question from Nicola, do you use storytelling to stimulate creativity, or maybe how better use Lego to stimulate creativity through storytelling, if I may rephrase that?
Storytelling is a part. Unfortunately, I have to say that in the past they even had a specific set, Story Starter, for primary education. But for kindergarten, there's still a set called Storytale with Duplo to support children in developing storytelling skills. And like I described with the Coding Express Duplo train, learning children to put things in an order and to describe that order, put things in a loop to describe things that repeat themselves, but also describe how things that the story might change all of a sudden. We want to go on a holiday, and do we want to go to the mountains or to the sea? Those are elements that we use in programming robots, but they are also basic elements in creating a story. A lot of aspects also in the more STEAM-focused sets are still related to storytelling. And of course, in the end, when students present their solution, sometimes, and originally I have an engineering background, it's easier to show the working model of, for example, a gearing system, and to tell about that while you are showing it, than just to try to tell it by heart, and everybody has to, in their mind, create the model of what you are trying to explain. So yes, storytelling is a part, something very explicit, like in Storytales with the Duplo set for in early learning, and sometimes it is part of the sharing phase. And of course, when you look at Lego Serious Play, it is a big part, because that's where what Lego Serious Play is about, to create a shared story. So.
Thank you, very interesting. And then also people say that the presentation was inspiring, and yeah, thank you. Basically, there was another question.
Thank you very much.
There was another question in the first minutes of your presentation. So a person asked if you can tell us about some other collaborations between Lego and other companies, for example, like NASA or European Space Agency maybe. Are there any new collaborations that can merge in future or in the pipeline? So how this works?
Yeah, well, what's in the pipeline, and I might not know, and what I know is perhaps not already available to announce publicly. But what you have seen in the past is that Lego Education has made a change. For example, with Lego Mindstorms, we see it right now. There was a specific program made by Lego Education to be used with Mindstorms, to program Mindstorms. And they are now changing that also to use Scratch and to use Python. Scratch in lower secondary, but Python to be used in upper secondary. And for example, Spike Prime is also programmed with Scratch. There are some specific elements created to be used with the Lego education sets. And that is a collaboration with MIT. And some of you might know the first Lego League program, which is a worldwide competition. If you don't know it, try to find it online. I will type it in the chat right now. It's a worldwide competition using Lego. It's created by Lego Education and First, which is a US organization. And last year, the theme of the competition was about space and going to the moon, going into space. And that was a collaboration with NASA and ESA. So yes, there are several collaborations. I think these are the most important ones right now. And of course, there's collaborations with organizations like European Schoolnet, for example, for this webinar.
Yeah. So thanks for mentioning this. And I see only thank you. Maybe the last question that I would like to address, or maybe actually two questions in one. What was the most surprising for you when you worked with teachers when they first experienced Lego resources or Lego sets? And the second one, what would be your advice to those who are not yet trying things out in their classroom or on their own?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, good questions. Thank you. Let me write the second one down. First try in the classroom. And then the first one, what was the most surprising to me is that when looking at, for example, Lego Mindstorms, a lot of teachers, they do know about it a little bit, or they might have seen it, but they did not dare to use it inside their classroom. Their idea was to understand it fully first, and then only when they understood it, then to take it into the classroom and to do it with their students, to use it with their students. And that is because they looked at it only from a technological perspective, as a robot, as a robotic tool. What I really like about the Lego education materials, but also about their lesson plans, is that they are also always related, like I just described in the presentation. They are always related to a context, to another subject, whether it's math or biology or geography, or that in the end, the Lego bricks are just a tool for children to get more insight and also to express their understanding of a problem, to express their solution better, and to share the insights that they have gained. And that is exactly where the physical materials and the hands-on approach support the learning. So what I noticed in the past few years is that when teachers start to look at it from that perspective, they have a completely different look on using Lego bricks or any other physical material during their lessons. So that also answers a little bit already the second question. The first try, I always say just open the box and try. It's made for kids. So you can't really break it. And if you do, call the Lego Education Support service line, because they will help you out always. And if you get a new box of Lego education materials in your school, open it, download the teacher guides, and most of the teacher guides, they just start using it. And they give you some really basic level activities that you can do with the children in your classroom. And by doing so, you're showing also to your students that you are capable, you are showing them how to explore new things and how to learn new things just by opening up the box and trying it out. And your role as a teacher is then to ask the right questions and to make sure that the reflection takes place after every step that they have taken. And so they are aware of the things that they are learning when they are starting to experiment.
Sounds interesting, and very nice advice to teachers who would like to try these things out, because I've seen in the chat that not all teachers were that experienced with the tools. Some of them know them, but some of them say, oh, I've never experienced that, or so I thought this is appealing to the audience that
Yeah, just to
we are here with. Yeah.
yeah, perhaps a small addition. When I do a training within 1 hour, especially with the new Spike Prime set, using Scratch, within 1 hour, you will be able to build a robot and to program it yourself, and even use a sensor to make things go in another direction, or to respond to a colored brick or whatever. So that's how easy it can be to step in. So just dare to step and to start using them.
Yeah, sounds very motivating. And I think we are almost out of time. So I see only many thanks and thank you very much for the presentation.
Yep.
So special thanks to you, Jelle, and thank you to all the participants who joined us today. So as I said, we are almost out of time, and I would like to take a couple of minutes to share some information that might be interesting to our participants. So we will send to all of you a follow-up email with a short survey to evaluate our webinar, and we will be grateful to receive your feedback on this session. So if any of you would like to receive a certificate of attendance, please fill out the survey, and at the end you will have an opportunity to indicate this your name and surname and name under which you logged in, to make sure that we award you with a certificate. So please note that only participants who participated today live with us in this webinar will receive this. So I hope you enjoyed the webinar, and thanks for participating. Jelle, thank you for taking the time to present such interesting material. That's
Thank you for giving us the time, and thank you everyone for listening in. I hope you have a little bit of inspiration for tomorrow.
Yes, that's all actually from our side, and we hope to see you all in the next online events already in 2020. So have a nice evening and goodbye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.